Well, welcome back, and always delighted and quite honestly honored when we have time to sit down with Troy Miller. He's the CEO of the National Religious Broadcasters. Under this man's leadership, this organization has grown to an amazing organization and been a proud member of this for decades. And he's just doing a terrific job. He never sleeps. But that's okay. That's his lifestyle now. He's learned how to do that. And you go to nrb.org. That is the website right there. We'll talk about the big convention coming up. But the nrb.org is the website. No matter what kind of a Christian organization you are, if you want to deal with media in your ministry, this is the place to go and to join. nrb.org. Troy, good to see you, buddy. How are you?
It's good to be with you, Perry, as always. Thawing out here in Nashville.
Oh, gosh, yeah. How you guys doing? We had 3 feet of snow or something?
Well, it wasn't the snow so much. We got a couple of inches of ice, and that's really made everything kind of a mess. I think we've got over 200,000 around the community still without power, but so we're praying for those folks here. But hopefully warm weather's on its way.
Yeah, good to see you. Hey, before I get into all this other stuff, I want to say to you and your team, thank you so very much for the comments that you filed with the FCC dealing with TV caps. I don't know if a lot of people understand that. For those of us in the industry, it's a big deal, and I read your comments thoroughly, and I just want to say thank you. They were spot on.
Oh, thanks, Perry. You know, it is a big issue. This gets reviewed by the FCC every 4 years, and they're a little bit behind on this one. This is actually the 2022 review. It got sort of railroaded like a lot of things during COVID, and so we really chimed in on this. We just think that so many things are changing in the landscape right now that the FCC shouldn't do anything to the rules. They should just hold things as they are and let a lot of this other technology and things run its course before they look at this.
Well, again, the strength of the NRB, you have now a respected voice at the table because of your hard work and the dedication of your team. And quite frankly, the team that you put together, that review was well worded. And I just want to say thanks. I'm with you, man. We got to stop this one.
Amen. Amen to that. Yeah.
All right. I want to come back to religious freedom. We watched in complete shock a church get loaded up with protesters in Minnesota. What's your take on that, and where is it leading?
Well, look, the problem, I think we've been seeing this for a number of years, and it's now, spilled into the church with this church service. But the anarchy that are coming from these kinds of protesters, the complete disregard, not only for the law, Perry, but just respect in general. Why would you barge into a church service that was in progress, full of people who are there for a very specific purpose? You have families, you have young children, you have all of these folks in the room, and then you have this group that just rushes in to protest. Quite honestly, they weren't even sure what they were there for, because they had identified that one of the pastors, not the lead pastor, was possibly a bivocational pastor and had a civic job, maybe working for the Department of Homeland Security. And then they decided they were going to target this church and make this, I guess, make this a media event for them, because they brought media with them. And so it's very alarming, Perry.
Was this a violation of First Amendment?
This is absolutely a civil rights violation. This was a violation of this church's civil rights. They were trespassing at the minimum, Perry. They were asked to leave. They didn't leave. They interrupted a worship service. That's a First Amendment free exercise thereof. So just a number of things there. Plus, Perry, there's something called the FACE Act out there. Mm-hmm. And the FACE Act was put together to Congress to protect against these kinds of incidents from happening. It's often used against pro-lifers when they're demonstrating or marching against abortion clinics. Recently, as I think it was about 8 years ago, right here in my hometown, there were 11 people that were arrested and charged under the FACE Act for praying in the hallway outside of an abortion clinic, President Trump earlier this year pardoned those people. But this kind of act that they did in this church service, that's a direct violation against the FACE Act. And so we're happy to see that, at least for now, the Justice Department has arrested 2, I think maybe 3 individuals, and are seeking more. And we hope that they really follow through with prosecution, because I think if you don't send a clear message here, Perry, we're going to see a lot more of this.
Okay, so they're very good at intimidation. Do you think that the average church understands where we are heading if we don't stop this?
No, I think that's the problem, Perry. I think the average church doesn't understand where we're heading. And I think they knew exactly what they were doing. Their goal, as you said, was intimidation, not particularly intimidation for that church, but the fact that they brought media with them. They knew this was going to be a media event. This was to send a message to all churches. If you want your church service to be disrupted like this, if you want to have protesters in your pews, then you keep getting involved in the governance issues, the policy issues of this country. And so that was a message that was sent clear to churches. And I hope churches understand we are called to have the courage to stand up against these kinds of incidences, not to back away from them.
I just had the president of Arizona Christian University on. Maybe you caught a little bit of that. And we were chit-chatting about biblical worldview. And it seems like today that the biblical worldview and just about everything the culture is trying to redefine, you could say life, sexuality, all the way down to free speech is being redefined. My concern is this. If this what happened in Minnesota church isn't really dealt with forcefully and pushed back, what I don't hear across the country as a result of that, where pastors speaking out about this, some may have, but for the most part, a lot of just didn't touch it. Why? Because like everything else, it's been politicized, and they want to drop anything that's political. Do you think we understand the stealth of the enemy and what they're trying to do here?
I don't think we understand, Perry, what the word political means. I said this the other day. It's amazing to me that Christians are the only ones, and the only group in this country, certainly the only faith group, that anytime they exercise their faith, their beliefs, the things that they hold dear to them, if they exercise those in a public sector, and especially if they exercise them when it comes to the governance of their communities, their states, or the federal government, they're suddenly labeled as being political. Yet, we know that if the Islamists in this country do it, it's okay. If the Hindus in the country do it, it's okay. It's certainly okay if the secular atheists, agnostics in this country do it, then that's even better. But Christians should somehow take their worldview, take the beliefs, and really what we're talking about here are the beliefs that we hold dear. Mm-hmm. Somehow we should take those beliefs and keep them in the 4 walls of our church or our home, and they should never leave it. We're the only group that's called that when we exercise our rights, we're called radicals and extremists, Perry, and I hope pastors understand that. I hope they understand that they can't back away. They can't back away far enough from this to ever appease the left.
Do you think that, and I say this cautiously and even with a broken heart, do you think that we Christians are becoming complicit by not speaking out of the breaking of laws? In other words, we're becoming lawless because we're saying nothing.
Yeah, absolutely, Perry. I do think we are becoming lawless because we're not speaking up, and we're not the ones that are really, giving truth to the culture. And look, we have the only truth, Perry. We understand that the role of government is to enforce the laws of this country against the lawless. And if you don't enforce those laws against lawless people, then your entire society will simply become lawless. And pastors are not doing either their congregations or their communities any favor by just, as I say, cowering away from these issues. Think about it for a second, Perry. What could be the most unloving thing you could do to a person than not to step up when you have the truth, to tell the truth, and instead leave them under a lawless, godless society? And that's the kind of leadership that they're going to have. I don't know how a pastor could step back and look at that and say, well, that's me loving my neighbor.
Are we communicating that as Christian communicators?
I think we're starting to see more and more pushback on this. I think as the left, and certainly we know as the enemy, pushes harder against the church, I think we're starting to see the church wisen up and say, oh, there really is a battle going on here. There really is a war in place. It's a spiritual war, and it's also a physical war that has spilt over. We're seeing that, I think, especially amongst the younger generations that are kind of rejecting this message, and they're looking for truth. You know, we've had this spike in church attendance. We've had this spike in visits to Christian websites and to Christian media. So all of these, I think, show that the culture itself says this can't be the way we're meant to live.
Okay, let me take a quick break here and say to our viewers and listeners, always an honor to have Troy Miller with us, CEO of the National Religious Broadcasters. Go to nrb.org. That's the website. The big convention coming up in February. If you are involved in anything in ministry and you use any forms of media, this is the place to go and connect. And you can check it out, nrb.org. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Always an honor to have with us Troy Miller. He's the CEO of the National Religious Broadcasters, and you can go to nrb.org. It is the organization to belong to, and I have been for decades, and I just want to say an honor to do so. But they're there. They are our advocates all across the globe. Troy, to that point, the local Radio Freedom Act, thank God it got through some bipartisan connections there, and the potential of what they're calling the performance tax. How close did we come to dodging a bullet here?
Well, I think we came pretty close. There's a lot of forces trying to, push this through, and it's counteract the American Music Fairness Act. But look, we have a lot of support in Congress, and I think Congress is going to have to step back and take a look at the entire royalty structure. We've been band-aiding this for years with just little patches here, patches there. Or new taxes here, new taxes there. And so we're really pushing hard to get Congress to step back and take a look at the whole royalty system and really find out what's fair for the artist, for the publishers, and for those radio stations and for those who are playing the music. So that's going to be a big push for us going into this next Congress.
Okay, so what is there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 organizations we pay money to?
5 major ones, and there's actually a half a dozen little ones out there that keep popping up as well. And then it's sort of kind of crazy, Perry, because you pay one tax for one to be on this broadcast, and this exact same broadcast, if it's streaming, it has a different tax. So it needs to be fixed.
Oh gosh, does it ever? All right, so where do you think media is heading these days with all of the technology? AI, I'll throw that in the mix for those of us in broadcasting, especially on the television side. We're looking at 3.0 versus 1.0. I don't know what keeps you up at night, but perhaps we're both being kept up by the same thing.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm a technology guy by trade, so that's my background is in the whole technology. And of course, we've seen a lot of innovations over the last decade. And now, as you said, with AI, we're seeing just innovations that seem to be coming almost every 24 hours. We're looking at something new. AI is going to be a big discussion at the NRB convention coming up here in a few weeks. We have a whole stage dedicated to AI, but not just the productivity side of AI, the things it could do in both the radio studios and television studios, but also talk about the morality, the ethics, and some of the legalities around AI. We know there's a lot of things going on with deep fakes that are out there. We know there's a lot of plagiarism going on with people's data and people's information and their work and their content. So we have a lot to go there. Look, I've said this before, Perry. I think we're in the greatest age of communications that that's ever existed in the history of mankind. We can instantly communicate around the globe. But with that comes also great responsibility. Responsibility for us as Christians to hold up to the high standards we've had. Earlier this year in our Barna study, we showed that Christian media has nearly a 66% approval rating across the general population as being both trustworthy and valuable. And so that's something I think we really have to concentrate on. It really sets us apart from mainstream media, whether it's news media or entertainment or information. And that's a challenge for us going forward.
That being said, we're also the fly in the ointment to the hardcore socialists that don't want Christian media. I know you watch that. Is that still a threat out there? I mean, how would we become vigilant with that?
Oh, absolutely. Look, mainstream media doesn't cover anything, that as it relates to Christianity unless they can cover it either in an embarrassing or negative way. The fact that less than 2% of the mainstream media has covered the vast amounts of Christian persecution that's been going on around the globe, and especially the events in Nigeria. That just tells you everything we need to know about mainstream media. And Perry, you hit it right on the head. Look, the one thing I think that the left understands is there is one institution that stands in their way from just rolling across this country and probably rolling across the world, and that's the Church of Jesus Christ. That is the Christian church. And they know that they have to silence, marginalize that message if they have any chance for being successful in what they're trying to do. So that's something, Perry, we have to really be aware of, and we have to step up to the plate and answer that. We can't just set aside passively back while this happens.
With that, Troy, and I know in the secular broadcast world, there's a lot of consolidating going on. And at the end of the day, it could be threatening to the local. It goes back to the CAP Act that you wrote the wonderful piece on. But I'm really concerned about the local Christian broadcaster, if they understand the world that we're in and how fragile it is.
Yeah, I think so, Perry. Our theme this year for the NRB convention is that a new era of Christian communication begins now. Some of that has to do with the technology advancements that have been going on, certainly AI. But a lot of that, Perry, we're going to talk about has to do with the threats to Christian communicators in America and around the globe, and the threats to the local church. Local churches are Christian communicators as much as the broadcasters are in their communities. Mm-hmm. And if we don't understand that those are real threats that would like to permanently silence our voice from the public sector, then that's what will happen. Our voice will be permanently silenced from the public sector. So we're asking the Christian communicators, this is an age where courage is going to be one of the most important things that we can have, one of the most important characteristics that we can hold, character traits we can have, because we have to stand up and not fall for the populism, seeker-friendly kind of movement that's been in so many pulpits and so many studios across this country. If we're going to reach a culture for the truth of the gospel, and we're going to impact that culture for the better.
What do you think the biggest threat is, Troy?
I think there's two big threats right now in America, and I think that we're missing both of them. I think we underestimate, as you said, the weaponization of corporate America against the Christian message. And I also think the next biggest threat is the rise of Islam in America. Sharia law, which is being pushed now in a number of states, is completely 100% opposed to not only the American way of life, our constitutional republic, but it is completely opposed to the Christian worldview. Those are the two biggest threats, I think, around the world, and unfortunately, they have merged together to battle against the church.
Mm-hmm. Because my other concern when watching that is, will the equal access law ever come back to life where, I mean, we fought that in days gone by, but if you see cities like New York and what's happening in Minneapolis and Minnesota and everything else, if that influences the next, say, administration goes left and the FCC changes and they bring back that, we would have to give equal time to opposing theology.
Yeah, isn't that kind of sounds just crazy? I do think there's a number of court cases, though, Perry, that are out there in our favor. I think we have the courts from now. We certainly have to act while we have this friendly administration in place to put a number of safeguards in there. That's why we're chiming up on a Supreme Court case that the FCC has right now. It's their ability to do fines and take away licenses without due process. While we like this friendly FCC we have today, we know that it's not always going to be friendly. And so we're fighting that any broadcasters would have a due process by jury if that does come to fruition down the road.
I think people need to understand that of all of the media platforms out there, broadcast is the one that's regulated.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Not just regulated, it's extremely regulated to the point where the FCC holds the threat of taking your license away, and then you're done. Your broadcasting career is over, and nobody else has that kind of thing holding over their head. The streaming platforms don't have that. The internet platforms don't have it. Matter of fact, the internet platforms have a law, this Section 230, that gives them a bit of leeway and in some cases a free pass on a lot of things that they do. So you're right, Perry. The broadcasters are held under stricter regulation than any other form of communication.
All right, Troy, plug the convention. People got 2.5 weeks to get a ticket and get there.
Yeah, it's the largest gathering of Christian communicators, Christian media professionals under one roof. It's in Nashville, Tennessee, February 17th through the 20th. And it's opened the door to everybody. If you're a Christian media person, you should definitely be there. But if you're one of the audience members, you just want to come by, meet Perry, meet some of your other favorite people, well, they're going to be in the halls as well.
Okay. Well, by the way, will the snow be gone by then?
Yeah, the snow should be gone by then.
Okay. One other quick question, and I'll let you go. How are you doing internationally? How's the NRB doing internationally? I know you got a lot of connections out there. You're supporting a lot of organizations. How are they doing out there?
Well, look, as far as the NRB is doing, we're growing internationally. We've had more attendees international the last 3 years at our convention. We're expecting that to be up again this year. We're working with more organizations around the globe. But at the same time, Perry, it's important to do that because Christian persecution is up around the globe as well. There are a number of places, like you said here, around the world where right now to be a Christian broadcaster is kind of putting a target on your back. So there's a lot of work we have to do, continue to do with this administration. But look, God's moving forward and the gospel isn't going to be stopped. So as long as we have the courage to speak out and speak up.
One last quick, and I keep getting one more, but let me squeeze it in. AM radio, you've been working hard to protect AM radio. How's it going?
Look, we're hoping that this round, actually we were hoping before the convention, this would make it to a floor vote. We're waiting for these last appropriation bills that's taken priority in the House right now. They're trying to get a health care bill passed. We've been promised that as soon as that health care bill is up and out of the way, then the AM radio bill is going to get to the floor. It's the most bipartisan bill in Congress, 350 co-sponsors in the House, over 60 in the Senate. It should breeze through once it gets a floor vote and then be on the president's desk. So we're going to keep the pressure up to make sure that happens this quarter.
Again, thank you for you and your team. You guys have been a real hawk on that. So thank you, brother. We pray for you. And we'll see you in a couple weeks, and get some rest. when you're not shoveling snow, take a nap, okay?
All right.
Good to see you, friend. Thank you.
Good to see you.